The darkness was absolute. That's the first thing I remember about the blackout. Not the alarms, not the confusion, but the perfect, suffocating darkness that seemed to swallow everything whole. It's funny how you never realize how much you rely on the constant hum of technology until it's gone. One moment I was running diagnostics on the Wart core's secondary cooling systems, and the next, nothing. Hello. Engineering. This is Chief Engineer Reeves. Anyone copy? My voice echoed through the empty corridor as the emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows that danced across the metal walls. The starship Artemis was one of the most advanced vessels in the United Earth Fleet, supposedly unsinkable, as the recruiters had proudly proclaimed. Yet here we were, drifting silently through the void between stars, our main systems completely offline. I pressed my hand against the cool metal wall to steady myself, feeling the ship beneath my fingers. 15 years of service across 3 different vessels, and I'd never experienced a complete systems failure like this. Something was very, very wrong. Human. You are unharmed. The voice came from behind me, causing me to spin around faster than I care to admit. Standing there, illuminated by the soft blue glow of bioluminescent patches on his exoskeleton, was Crixvon, the Tesserand technician assigned to my department just 2 cycles ago. His compound eyes reflected what little light remained in the corridor, giving him an almost predatory appearance in the darkness. "I'm fine," I said, trying to mask my startled reaction. "Do you know what happened?" The alien's mandibles clicked together rapidly, their equivalent of a head shake. Negative. I was calibrating the quantum stabilizers when all systems terminated simultaneously. Most unusual. That was putting it mildly. The Artemis had 7 redundant power systems. For all of them to fail at once was supposed to be mathematically impossible. "We need to get to the bridge," I said, already moving down the corridor, or at least to engineering. "Both locations are 26 decks from our current position," Crixvon stated matter-of-factly, falling into step beside me. "With all transport tubes non-functional and emergency seals likely engaged, reaching either destination would require approximately 7 hours of transit through maintenance shafts." I stopped walking. 7 hours. 6 hours and 53 minutes, accounting for your species' need for rest periods. Great, stuck in a crippled ship with the most literal-minded alien in the fleet. The Tesserans had only joined the Galactic Alliance 3 years ago, and their integration had been challenging, to say the least. Not because of any malice, but because they approached everything with such clinical detachment. No emotion, no small talk, just facts and figures delivered with unsettling precision. "We should return to crew quarters," Crixvon continued. "Emergency protocols dictate personnel should remain in designated safe zones until command issues new directives." He was right, of course. Standard procedure during a ship-wide emergency. But something about this situation felt off. "Fine," I conceded, "but I'm checking the local junction box first. Maybe we can get some answers." The junction box was located in a small alcove just around the corner. With the main power offline, I had to manually crank open the panel, the metal groaning in protest as I forced it aside. "This is unusual," Crixvon observed, peering over my shoulder at the exposed circuitry. "What is?" I asked, trying to make sense of the tangle of wires and optical channels. "The primary relays have been physically severed. This was not an accident or systems failure. Someone has deliberately disabled this section." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. Sabotage. The evidence suggests this conclusion, yes. Before I could respond, a distant boom echoed through the ship, followed by a subtle shudder that ran through the deck plates beneath our feet. Whatever had happened, it wasn't isolated to our section. "Crew quarters," I agreed, suddenly very aware of how exposed we were. Now, we made our way through the darkened corridors in tense silence, both of us straining to hear any sound that might indicate what was happening elsewhere on the ship. The Artemis was home to over 3,000 souls. Humans, Tesserans, and 24 other species from across the Alliance. If someone was systematically disabling the ship, "This is your assigned habitation unit?" Crixvon asked as we reached my quarters. "Yeah," I said, punching in my access code. To my relief, the manual override still worked, and the door slid open with a hiss. "Come on in. We'll figure out our next move from here." The alien hesitated at the threshold, compound eyes scanning the interior of my quarters. Human living spaces are disordered. Despite everything, I almost laughed. "It's called personality, Crixvon. You should try it sometime." The Tesserand tilted his head, clearly not understanding the jab. "I cannot alter my neurological structure to match human patterns." It was a joke. I sighed, gesturing him inside. "Come on, before someone or something finds us out here." As the door closed behind us, sealing us in the relative safety of my quarters, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Outside, the Artemis continued to drift silently through the void, her systems dark, her crew scattered and confused. And somewhere on board, someone, or something, was methodically taking control. What none of us knew then was that the next 12 hours would change everything we thought we knew about each other, about the Alliance, and about what it truly means to be human in a universe that suddenly seemed much darker and more dangerous than we'd ever imagined. The real question was, would any of us live long enough to tell the tale? I sealed the door behind us and watched as Crixvon moved cautiously into my quarters, his antennae twitching as he examined every corner of the room. The emergency lighting had kicked in, just enough to cast everything in a dim blue glow that made the familiar space feel alien and strange. "Your breathing pattern has changed," Crixvon observed, turning those unsettling compound eyes toward me. "Your species exhibits physiological responses to fear, correct?" I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling the tension that had knotted there. "I'm not afraid. I'm concerned. There's a difference." "Semantics," the Tesserand replied, but didn't press the issue. Instead, he moved to the viewport, staring out at the stars that seemed impossibly bright now that the ship's exterior lighting had gone dark. My quarters weren't much, standard officer accommodations on a deep space vessel, but seeing the alien standing there amid my scattered belongings made me suddenly self-conscious. A half-eaten meal on the desk, clothes draped over a chair, family photos stuck to the wall with adhesive, little pieces of humanity on display. "Do you have a plan, Engineer Reeves?" Crixvon asked without turning around. I moved to my equipment locker and keyed in the access code. "First things first, we need to establish communication." The locker hissed open, revealing my personal toolkit and emergency gear. I pulled out a portable comms unit and an old-fashioned chemical light stick, cracking the latter to flood the room with green light. "The ship's communication systems are offline," Crixvon reminded me. "This is a short-range emergency unit, works on a different frequency." I adjusted the settings, wincing at the burst of static that came through. "Hello, this is Chief Engineer Reeves. Anyone receiving?" Nothing but crackling static. "Perhaps interference from whatever disabled the ship's systems," Crixvon suggested. I was about to respond when a muffled thump came from somewhere above us, followed by the distinct sound of something heavy being dragged across the deck. We both froze. "That came from the deck above," Crixvon whispered, his normally emotionless voice tinged with something I'd never heard from a Tesserand before. "Urgency." I switched off the comms unit and dimmed the light stick. "Could be crew members," I said, not believing it for a second. "Negative. Crew would be using the maintenance shafts, not moving through sealed sections, and they would not have reason to be dragging heavy objects." Another thump, then silence. My heart pounded in my chest so loudly I was sure the Tesserand could hear it. "You served in the Coalition War," Crixvon said suddenly, those alien eyes studying me with unnerving intensity. I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden change in topic. 2 tours on the Madison. Most humans my age saw combat. Why? I have studied the human historical archives. Your species demonstrates remarkable adaptability under threat. My people find this fascinating. I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an observation. With Tesserans, it was always hard to tell. What about you? What were you doing during the war? Crixfon's mandibles clicked together rapidly, what I'd come to recognize as their equivalent of discomfort. I served as an observer. The Tesseran collective had not yet joined the alliance, but we monitored the conflict closely. There was something in the way he said it that made me wonder. The Tesserans had been notoriously neutral during the Coalition War, claiming they needed to study both sides before committing. Plenty of rumors circulated about Tesseran observers being spotted on Coalition vessels too. Before I could press further, my personal tablet blinked on the desk, its emergency battery kicking in with a notification. I moved quickly to pick it up. "That's impossible," I muttered, staring at the screen. Crixfon moved beside me. "What have you discovered?" I turned the tablet so he could see. "It's the ship's diagnostics. Someone's running an override sequence through my personal device." Lines of code scrolled rapidly across the screen. "But that would require captain-level authorization, or advanced intrusion programs," Crixfon added. "May I?" He held out a three-fingered hand. I hesitated. Personal tablets contained everything: service records, communications, private logs. Handing it over felt wrong, but given the circumstances. "Here," I said, passing it to him. "Just don't go poking through my personal files." The Tesserant's fingers moved over the screen with surprising dexterity. "Interesting. This is not a standard Alliance protocol." He pointed to a sequence of code. "This command structure resembles Tesserant architecture, but has been modified." A chill ran through me. "Are you saying that Tesserant is behind this?" His compound eyes flickered up to meet mine. "I am saying the coding structure bears similarities to Tesserant protocols, but it contains elements I do not recognize." The implications hung in the air between us. I'd worked with Crixfon for 2 months, but how well did I really know him? How much did any of us understand about the Tesserans, despite 3 years of supposed alliance? The tablet suddenly buzzed and went dark. Then, as if possessed, it reactivated with a single message on the screen. "Section 42B compromised. Retreat to emergency station Alpha." We looked at each other. "That's the hydroponics bay," I said. 2 decks up. "Who sent this command?" Crixfon asked. "I don't know. It's not coming through official channels." I chewed my lower lip, weighing our options. It could be a trap, or it could be the captain trying to rally survivors. Another boom shook the ship, this one close enough to make the deck plates vibrate beneath our feet. The lights in my quarters flickered and died, plunging us into darkness broken only by the soft bioluminescence of Crixfon's exoskeleton and the dim glow of the tablet. "We cannot remain here," the Tesserant said quietly. "Whatever is happening aboard this vessel is spreading systematically, section by section." He was right. Staying put meant waiting to be found by whatever or whoever had crippled the ship. "There's a maintenance shaft access in the bathroom," I said, moving toward the back of my quarters. "We can use it to reach hydroponics without using the main corridors." Crixfon followed closely behind me, his footsteps surprisingly light for a creature of his size. As I pulled back the hidden panel revealing the cramped maintenance shaft, another thought struck me. "You know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I never asked why you requested transfer to the Artemis. The flagship of the human fleet isn't usually where Tesserans choose to serve." In the dim blue light cast by his bioluminescent patches, Crixfon's alien features were unreadable. Perhaps that is a discussion best saved for when we are not in imminent danger, Engineer Reeves. With that non-answer hanging between us, I crawled into the tight confines of the maintenance shaft, the sound of my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Behind me, I could hear Crixfon entering the shaft, his exoskeleton scraping slightly against the metal walls. As we crawled through the darkness toward an uncertain destination, one thought kept circling in my mind. Who could I trust? The ship was compromised, communications were down, and I was trapped in a metal tube with an alien I barely knew, from a species that had once watched from the sidelines as humans died by the thousands. And somewhere above us, something was moving through the Artemis, deck by deck, section by section, with a purpose none of us understood. The maintenance shaft seemed to stretch on forever, a claustrophobic metal tube bathed in darkness, save for the weak glow of my lightstick and Crickston's bioluminescent patches. My knees ached from crawling, and sweat trickled down my spine, despite the steadily dropping temperature. The ship's environmental systems were failing, section by section. "Stop," Crickston whispered suddenly, freezing in place behind me. I held my breath, straining to hear whatever had caught the Tesserant's attention. At first, there was nothing but the distant creaking of the ship's hull. Then I heard it, a faint rhythmic tapping from somewhere ahead of us in the shaft. "Could be loose piping," I offered, but we both knew better. "It is deliberate," Crickston said. "A pattern. Listen." 3 quick taps, followed by 2 slow ones, then repeated. "It's Morse code," I realized. SOS. Someone's signaling for help. Without waiting for Crickston's response, I began moving forward again. Faster now. The tapping grew louder as we approached a junction where the shaft branched off in 3 directions. I paused, trying to determine which way the sound was coming from. "Left," Crickston said with certainty. "The acoustic resonance suggests the source is approximately 20 meters down the left passage." I nodded and turned left, the confined space making it difficult to maneuver. The tapping had become more urgent now, as if whoever was making it sensed our approach. As we neared what appeared to be another access panel, the sound stopped abruptly. I hesitated, suddenly aware of how vulnerable we were in this narrow tube. "Hello," I called out, keeping my voice low. "This is Chief Engineer Reeves. Is someone there?" Silence. Then, so faintly I almost missed it. "Help. Trapped." I moved to the access panel, finding it jammed from the other side. "We're going to get you out. Stand back if you can." I braced myself against the opposite wall of the shaft and kicked at the panel with both feet. It groaned but held firm. I kicked again, harder this time. With a screech of protesting metal, the panel gave way, tumbling into the space beyond. I poked my head through cautiously, sweeping the lightstick across what appeared to be a storage compartment. Huddled in the corner, clutching a piece of broken pipe she'd been using to tap out her signal, was Lieutenant Park from Astrometrics. "Chief Reeves," she gasped, her face pale in the green glow of the lightstick. A nasty gash across her forehead had left a trail of dried blood down one side of her face. "Thank God it's you." I climbed through the opening, helping her to her feet. "What happened, Lieutenant? What do you know about the blackout?" Her eyes widened as Crickston emerged from the shaft behind me, his alien form causing her to step back instinctively. "It's okay," I assured her. "Technician Crickston is with me." Park swallowed visibly, then nodded. "I was in Astrometrics when it happened. The systems just died, all at once. Then the emergency doors sealed, trapping us inside. That's when they came." A chill ran down my spine. "Who came, Lieutenant?" "I don't know. They were wearing environmental suits with darkened visors. They had weapons, not Alliance standard issue." Her voice trembled. "They rounded up everyone in the lab. I only got away because I was in the supply closet when they breached the door. I hid until they left, then made my way here through the ventilation system." "How many were there?" Crickston asked, his normally monotone voice now carrying an edge I'd never heard before. 5, maybe 6. They were speaking a language I didn't recognize." She looked at the Tesserant. "It wasn't Tesserant, before you ask. I've worked with enough of your people to know what that sounds like." I exchanged glances with Crickston. "We received a message directing us to Emergency Station Alpha in hydroponics. Could be other survivors gathering there." Park shook her head frantically. "No, you don't understand. They're hurting crew members. The messages, the sealed sections, They're funneling people exactly where they want them. My blood ran cold. You're saying it's a trap? She nodded grimly. I overheard them. They're taking people to Cargo Bay 3. I don't know why. The pieces weren't fitting together. Pirates wouldn't go to this much trouble. They'd just salvage what they could and leave. This was something else entirely. Something methodical. Precise. We need to get to the bridge, I decided. Or at least to a communication station powerful enough to send a distress signal. The nearest operational comm array would be in the auxiliary control room, Crixvon said. 2 decks above us. Park's eyes darted nervously between us. I can't go back out there. They're hunting for stragglers. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You don't have to. This storage compartment seems secure enough. We'll come back for you once we've assessed the situation. She reluctantly agreed, and after making sure she had water and the emergency medkit from my pack, Crixvon, and I returned to the maintenance shaft. This time, we climbed upward through a vertical section, the exertion making my arms burn with fatigue. You trust the lieutenant's account? Crixvon asked as we paused at a junction to catch our breath. No reason not to, I replied, though the question had been nagging at me too. You think she's lying? The Tesserand's antennae twitched. A gesture I'd learned indicated deep thought. Not necessarily lying, but perhaps not seeing clearly. Fear affects human perception. It affects Tesserand perception too, I bet. I shot back. We experience caution, not fear, he corrected. There is a biological distinction. I was about to argue the point when a violent shudder ran through the ship, nearly throwing us against the walls of the shaft. This wasn't like the previous tremors. This was a massive impact that seemed to reverberate through the entire vessel. That felt like. I started. Docking clamps, Crixvon finished. Someone has forcibly attached to the Artemis. We moved with renewed urgency, finally reaching the access panel that would lead us into the corridor near auxiliary control. I peered through the small viewing port in the panel. The hallway beyond was dark, but appeared empty. Ready? I whispered, preparing to open the panel. Crixvon placed a 3-fingered hand on my arm. Engineer Reeves, before we proceed, there is something you should know. The seriousness in his voice made me turn to face him fully, the confined space bringing us uncomfortably close. In the dim light, his alien features seemed almost vulnerable. My request for transfer to the Artemis was not random. I was sent here specifically because of rumors that this ship might be targeted. I stared at him. Targeted? By whom? And why didn't you warn anyone? Because the rumors came from sources deep within Tesserand intelligence. Sources that would have been compromised had I made a formal report. His compound eyes held mine. I thought it was merely a precaution. I did not truly believe. Another impact rocked the ship, cutting him off and nearly sending both of us tumbling. This one was followed by the unmistakable sound of metal being cut, the high-pitched whine of a plasma torch. They're cutting through the hull, I realized aloud, horror creeping through me. This isn't just a sabotage mission. It's an invasion. The access panel in front of us suddenly dented inward, as if struck by something heavy from the other side. Then again, harder this time, the metal beginning to buckle. Crixvon and I scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go in the narrow shaft. We were trapped. The panel burst open with a screech of torn metal, and blinding light flooded the shaft. I threw an arm across my eyes, momentarily blinded. When my vision cleared, I found myself staring down the barrel of a weapon unlike any I'd ever seen, organic-looking, with pulsing lights along its length. Holding it was a figure in a sealed environmental suit with a darkened visor, just as Park had described. Behind this figure, I could make out at least 3 more, similarly armed and armored. Human Engineering Chief, the figure said, its voice distorted through an electronic filter. And Tesserand Technician, you will come with us now. I glanced at Crixvon, searching his alien face for any sign that he knew more than he was telling me, any indication that this was somehow connected to his cryptic warning. What I saw instead was something I'd never expected to see on a Tesseract's face. Raw, unmistakable fear. Time seemed to freeze as I stared down the barrel of that strange weapon. My mind raced through combat training from years ago. Assess, adapt, overcome. But there was nowhere to run, no cover to take in the narrow confines of the maintenance shaft. Move, the figure commanded, gesturing with the weapon. I glanced at Crixvon beside me. The fear I glimpsed on his alien features had vanished, replaced by that familiar Tesseran stoicism. Had I imagined it? Our eyes met briefly, and something unspoken passed between us. A silent agreement. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together. We crawled out of the shaft into the corridor, where the armed figures surrounded us immediately. Up close, their environmental suits looked even stranger. Not the bulky design of standard space gear, but something more organic, almost like a second skin. Faint patterns pulsed beneath the surface, reminding me of Crixvon's bioluminescence, but with an eerie reddish glow. "Hands behind your backs," the leader ordered. One of the others produced restraints, metallic bands that snapped around our wrists with magnetic precision. "Who are you?" I demanded, wincing as the restraints tightened uncomfortably. "What do you want with this ship?" The leader tilted its helmeted head, the darkened visor revealing nothing of the face behind it. "Questions are not permitted," it said. Then, to the others, "Take them to processing with the rest." As they marched us down the corridor, I tried to memorize our route, noting which sections of the ship had power and which remained dark. The pattern seemed deliberate. Life support and gravity were operational, but communications, weapons, and propulsion were offline. These weren't just raiders. They knew exactly what they were doing. "Crixvon," I whispered, keeping my voice as low as possible. "These aren't pirates, are they?" The Tesseract's mandibles clicked softly, a warning to stay silent, but he gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. One of our captors shoved me forward. No communication. We turned a corner and I realized we were heading toward the main cargo bay, exactly where Lieutenant Park had warned they were taking crew members. My stomach knotted with dread. What were they doing with the captured crew? The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, I thought the power might fail completely. Our captors paused, their helmeted heads turning in unison as if listening to something I couldn't hear. "Accelerate the timetable," the leader said suddenly. "The Alliance cruiser will reach our position in 43 minutes. My heart leaped. Help was coming. If we could just stall them, buy some time. The human chose increased heart rate and pupil dilation. One of the others observed, pointing some kind of scanner at me. "It has understood our communication." The leader stepped closer, bending slightly to bring that featureless visor level with my eyes. "Your reinforcements will arrive too late, Engineer Reeves. By then, we will have what we came for." I flinched. They knew my name. How? The invasion, the systematic shutdown, the knowledge of crew positions. This wasn't opportunistic. It was targeted. We continued our march through the ship's corridors, passing signs of struggle. Scorch marks on walls, equipment scattered across the floor, a smear of blood along a doorframe. My mind raced, trying to piece together what these invaders could possibly want. The Artemis wasn't carrying any special cargo or classified technology that I knew of. Then again, as chief engineer, there were compartments of the ship even I didn't have clearance to access. When we reached the cargo bay, the massive doors slid open to reveal a scene of ordered chaos. At least 100 crew members were gathered there, seated in rows on the floor, guarded by more of the suited figures. Medical equipment had been set up along one wall, not Alliance standard, but clearly advanced. Some crew members were being led to these stations one by one. "What are they doing to them?" I whispered, horror creeping through me as I watched a science officer being strapped to a table, some kind of scanner passing over her body. "Biological assessment," Crixvon answered, his voice so low I barely caught it. "They are searching for specific genetic markers. Before I could ask what he meant, we were separated. Two guards took Crixvon toward a different section of the cargo bay, while I was pushed toward the medical stations. "Wait," I called out, struggling against my restraints. "Where are you taking him?" No one answered. I watched helplessly as Crixvon was led through a door at the far end of the cargo bay, disappearing from sight. One of the suited figures approached the medical station as I was secured to the examination table. Unlike the others, this one's suit had distinctive markings across the chest. Some kind of rank insignia, perhaps. "Commence detailed scan," the figure ordered. "Priority sequence." Cold metal pressed against my temples as some kind of device was attached to my head. I strained against the restraints, but they held firm. "Why me?" I demanded. "What makes me special enough for the priority sequence?" The figure paused, regarding me through that expressionless visor. When it spoke, the voice seemed different from the others, higher-pitched, almost curious. "You have had prolonged contact with subject Crixvon. We must determine the extent of the transmission." A chill ran through me. "Transmission? What are you talking about? Is Crixvon sick?" Something like a laugh came through the suit's audio system, a disturbing, modulated sound. "Not sick, Engineer Reeves. Evolved. The question is whether he has begun the process in you as well." Fear clawed at my throat as the implications sank in. I remembered how Crixvon had appeared in the darkness after the blackout, those bioluminescent patches on his exoskeleton glowing with the same pulsing pattern I now saw on these invaders' suits. The scanner above me hummed to life, bathing me in blue light. I closed my eyes against its brightness, my mind racing. Was Crixvon one of them? Had everything, his transfer request, his story about Tesseran intelligence, been a lie? No. The fear I'd seen on his face when we were captured had been real. Whatever was happening, Crixvon was as much a prisoner as I was. A commotion at the far end of the cargo bay drew my attention. Shouts and the sound of energy weapons discharging. I lifted my head as much as the restraints would allow, trying to see what was happening. The cargo bay doors had been forced open. Alliance security officers in tactical gear were pouring in, engaging the suited figures in firefights across the massive space. How had they gotten aboard? Then I remembered. The Alliance cruiser. It must have arrived earlier than the invaders expected. In the chaos that followed, the figure at my medical station abandoned the scan, rushing to join the defense. For a moment, I thought I might be left there, strapped to the table as the battle raged around me. But then familiar three-fingered hands were working at my restraints. Crixvon. I gasped as the Tesserend freed me from the table. "How did you?" "No time," he cut me off, helping me to my feet. "We must reach the primary control node. Now." Blood trickled from a gash on his exoskeleton, and one of his antennae hung at an odd angle. He clearly fought his way back to me. "What's going on?" I demanded as he pulled me toward a service door at the back of the cargo bay. Who are these people? What did they mean about transmission and evolution? Crixvon's compound eyes fixed on mine, and in them I saw something I'd never expected. Anguish, unmistakable even on his alien features. "They are the Ascended," he said, his mandibles clicking rapidly with what I now recognized as agitation. A splinter faction that broke from Tesserend society centuries ago, pursuing genetic modification and technological integration to a degree my people found abhorrent. We ducked through the service door just as an explosion rocked the cargo bay behind us. The narrow corridor beyond was deserted, emergency lighting casting long shadows as we ran. "They believe they have achieved the next stage of evolution," Crixvon continued between labored breaths, "and now they seek to spread their advancement to other species." The pieces finally clicked into place. That's why they're scanning the crew, looking for compatible hosts. Crixvon nodded grimly. "I was sent to the Artemis because our intelligence suggested they had infiltrated the Alliance. I never imagined," his voice faltered, "I never imagined their plan was already so far advanced." We reached a junction in the corridor, and Crixvon hesitated, looking both ways. "The control node," I prompted. "You said we need to reach it. Why?" His compound eyes met mine, and the intensity in them sent a chill down my spine. "Because, Engineer Reeves, they have attached a quantum resonance device to the Artemis power core. When activated, it will convert the core's energy into a pulse that will rewrite the genetic structure of every living thing on this ship." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "We have less than 10 minutes to stop it." Another explosion rocked the ship, closer this time. The lights flickered, and for a moment we were plunged into darkness, broken only by the soft blue glow of Crixfon's bioluminescent patches. "Then what are we waiting for?" I said, forcing confidence into my voice despite the fear threatening to overwhelm me. As the emergency lighting sputtered back to life, we took off running down the right-hand corridor, the sounds of battle echoing behind us. Ahead lay the heart of the ship, and a countdown that threatened to transform us all into something no longer human, no longer ourselves. And I couldn't shake the nagging thought that there was still something Crixfon wasn't telling me. We sprinted through the service corridors, the ship's emergency lighting casting everything in a blood-red glow. Distant explosions rocked the Artemis, sending vibrations through the deck plates beneath our feet. The battle between Alliance security and the Ascended was spreading throughout the ship. "How much farther?" I gasped, my lungs burning. Despite regular PT requirements for all Alliance personnel, nothing prepares you for running for your life through a ship under attack. "2 more junctions," Crixfon replied, his breathing surprisingly steady. "The auxiliary engineering control node is located." He cut off abruptly, throwing out an arm to stop me as we rounded a corner. Ahead of us, 2 of the Ascended were working on an access panel, their backs to us. The strange organic patterns on their suits pulsed with that eerie reddish glow. We ducked back around the corner. "We need another route," I whispered. Crixfon's compound eyes narrowed. "There is no other route that would allow us to reach the node in time." I glanced at the utility belt I'd managed to grab during our escape from the cargo bay. Among the tools was a small plasma cutter. Not a weapon by any means, but in desperate times. "I have an idea," I murmured, reaching for a nearby maintenance panel. "But I need you to trust me." The Tesserant studied me for a moment, then nodded once. "Proceed, Engineer Reeves." Working quickly, I removed the panel and located the environmental control relays for this section. "When I give the signal, be ready to move fast," I said, adjusting the settings. "And hold your breath." Without waiting for his response, I rerouted the oxygen flow, creating a localized vacuum in the corridor ahead where the Ascended were working. The effect was immediate. Alarms blared as emergency protocols activated. The 2 figures staggered, their movements becoming disoriented as they were suddenly deprived of oxygen. "Now," I hissed, replacing the panel and darting forward. We rushed past the Ascended, who were too disoriented to stop us. One made a clumsy grab for my arm, but I twisted away, the momentum carrying us around the next corner. Behind us, I heard the hiss of emergency systems restoring atmosphere to the affected section. "Impressive improvisation," Crixfon remarked as we continued our sprint. "Basic engineering principles," I panted. "Nothing fancy." But the small victory was short-lived. As we approached the final junction before the control node, the ship lurched violently, throwing both of us against the wall. Emergency bulkheads began to descend throughout the corridor. "They're initiating a lockdown," Crixfon shouted over the blare of alarms. "We must hurry." We ducked under a descending bulkhead, rolling into the next section just before it sealed behind us. Up ahead, I could see the entrance to the auxiliary engineering control node, our destination. But between us and the door stood 3 of the Ascended, weapons raised. "Surrender or be terminated," the central figure stated flatly. "You cannot stop what has already begun." I glanced at Crixfon, searching for some indication of a plan. His attention was fixed not on the Ascended, but on something above them, a junction box for the fire suppression system. Understanding clicked into place. I reached for my tool belt again, finding the plasma cutter. "You know what's interesting about Alliance fire protocols?" I called out, trying to keep their attention on me. "They're designed to protect organic life forms." The Ascended tilted their helmeted heads in unison, an unsettlingly synchronized movement. "But you're not exactly organic anymore, are you?" I continued, raising the plasma cutter. "Not entirely." Before they could react, I fired the cutter at the junction box. Superheated chemical foam erupted from the ceiling, designed to coat anything in its path with flame-retardant material. The Ascended staggered backward, their suits reacting violently to the foam, the organic components bubbling and smoking on contact. In the chaos, Krixvan darted forward with surprising speed, delivering precise strikes to vulnerable points on their environmental suits. I followed, ducking under a wild swing from one of the disoriented invaders and slamming my shoulder into another, using my body weight to knock it off balance. Seconds later, we were through, leaving the three Ascended struggling with their compromised suits behind us. Krixvan pressed his hand against the access panel for the control node, and the door slid open. "That won't hold them for long," I warned as we rushed inside, sealing the door behind us. The control node was a cramped space, lined with displays and access terminals. Under normal circumstances, it would be staffed by at least 3 engineers, monitoring the ship's critical systems. Now it was deserted, and at the center of the room, attached to the main power relay, was a device I'd never seen before. About the size of a basketball, it pulsed with the same organic-mechanical hybrid technology as the Ascended suits. Tendrils extended from its core, burrowing into the ship's systems like veins. "The quantum resonance device," Krixvan confirmed, moving toward it immediately. "We have less than 4 minutes before activation." I joined him, examining the alien technology with growing dread. "How do we disable it?" Krixvan's fingers moved over the surface of the device, tracing patterns I couldn't begin to understand. "The core must be extracted without triggering the fail-safe mechanisms," he explained. "It requires intimate knowledge of Ascended technology." "Which you have?" I asked, the question that had been gnawing at me finally breaking through. His compound eyes met mine, and I saw hesitation there. "Yes, because I was once connected to them." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, connected?" "There is no time to explain fully," he said, turning back to the device. "But the reason I was selected for this mission was my unique experience. I was taken by the Ascended as a juvenile, subjected to early-stage modification, before being rescued by Tesseract's special forces. The implications were staggering." "So your part?" "No," he cut me off sharply. "The process was halted before integration was complete, but I retain knowledge of their methods, their technology." His fingers continued their intricate work on the device. "It is both my greatest shame and, at this moment, our only hope." A pounding at the door interrupted us. The Ascended had recovered and were attempting to break through. "How much longer?" I asked, grabbing a heavy wrench from a nearby tool cabinet and bracing myself near the door. "The extraction sequence is complex," Krixvan replied, his focus unwavering. 3 minutes, at minimum." "We don't have 3 minutes," I said, watching as the door began to buckle under the assault from outside. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time, and the lights flickered. On the status displays around us, I could see that the battle had reached a critical point. Alliance forces had retaken several key sections of the ship, but the Ascended were concentrating their efforts here, on the control node and their precious device. An idea struck me, desperate, dangerous, but possibly our only chance. "What if we don't try to disarm it?" I suggested, moving to the main engineering console. "What if we redirect it instead?" Krixvan looked up sharply. "Explain." "This device is designed to channel energy from the ship's power core, converting it into some kind of genetic rewriting pulse." "Right." My fingers flew across the console, accessing systems that, as chief engineer, only I had the clearance to control. What if we change where that energy comes from? Understanding dawned in Crixfon's alien features. You propose to create a feedback loop. Exactly. Instead of drawing from the main core, we wrote it to draw power from itself. I continued working, bypassing safety protocols and rerouting critical systems. It should create an internal cascade failure. That would generate an explosion, Crixfon warned. Possibly a significant one. The door to the control node buckled further, a three-fingered hand, unnaturally elongated and partially mechanical, pushing through a gap that had formed. We'll trigger emergency containment fields, I said, working faster now. Localize the blast to this section only. Crixfon hesitated, then nodded. It could work, but someone would need to remain to complete the sequence manually. The final override requires continuous authentication. Our eyes met, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between us. A mutual understanding of what was at stake and what might be necessary to stop it. I'll do it, I said firmly. You know more about the Ascended than anyone. The Alliance will need that knowledge to fight them. No. Crixfon's voice was surprisingly gentle. Your species has a saying. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. This is my responsibility. Before I could argue, the door burst open. 3 of the Ascended rushed in, their strange weapons raised. Without hesitation, Crixfon lunged forward, intercepting them with a ferocity I'd never witnessed from a Tesseran. Complete the sequence, he shouted, grappling with the nearest invader. Now. My hands trembled as I entered the final commands, initiating the feedback loop and activating the containment fields. The quantum device began to vibrate, its organic components writhing as if in pain. Warning klaxons blared throughout the control node. Containment breach imminent, the ship's computer announced. Evacuate immediately. 30 seconds to critical failure. Behind me, Crixfon fought with unexpected skill and desperation, holding the Ascended at bay. One of them broke free, rushing toward me with inhuman speed. I swung the wrench, connecting with its helmeted head with a satisfying crunch. Go, Crixfon ordered, his exoskeleton cracked and leaking fluid from multiple wounds. The manual override must be maintained until detonation. I will hold them. I'm not leaving you, I shouted back, even as the quantum device's vibrations intensified, the air around it beginning to shimmer with energy. Crixfon's compound eyes fixed on mine one last time, and I saw something there I would never have expected from a species known for its emotional detachment, a profound, unmistakable compassion. 20 seconds to critical failure, the computer intoned. In a blur of movement, Crixfon broke away from the Ascended he was fighting and lunged toward me. Before I could react, he had shoved me through the doorway and slammed his hand on the emergency seal control. The last thing I saw before the reinforced door closed between us was Crixfon turning back to face the Ascended, positioning himself between them and the now wildly pulsing device. No, I screamed, pounding on the seal door. Crixfon. 10 seconds to critical failure. Clear the area immediately. I stood frozen in place, torn between the instinct to run and the desperate, irrational desire to somehow save my alien companion. In just days, we had gone from reluctant colleagues to something I never thought possible. Friends who trusted each other with their lives. 5 seconds to critical failure. The corridor around me pulsed with red warning lights. Emergency bulkheads began to descend, cutting off the section. I turned and ran, guilt and grief propelling me forward, as tears blurred my vision. Behind me, the countdown continued. 3, 2, 1. The explosion rocked the entire ship, throwing me against the corridor wall as the emergency bulkheads finished sealing. The lights flickered, died, then slowly came back online as auxiliary power systems engage. An eerie silence followed, broken only by the distant sound of damage control alarms and my own ragged breathing. Crixfon was gone. The realization hit me like a physical blow, leaving me hollow. I slumped against the wall, staring at the sealed bulkhead that separated me from where my friend had just sacrificed himself. Friend. The word echoed in my mind. When had that happened? When had the formal, literal-minded alien technician become someone I cared about losing? Chief Engineer Reeves. The voice crackled through my comm unit, startling me. This is Captain Harlow. Report your status. I fumbled with the device. Reeves here. What was I? Alive. Uninjured. Both seemed inadequate. I'm operational, Captain. The Ascended device. Neutralized. My voice sounded distant, detached. Technician Crixvon. He didn't make it. A pause. Understood. We've retaken the bridge and engineering. Alliance reinforcements have boarded and are securing the remaining sections. Report to medical for assessment. Captain, what about the other Ascended? Their ships. Retreating. Whatever you and the Tesserine did in there sent some kind of feedback pulse through their neural network. They're in disarray. Another pause. You did good work, Chief. Both of you. The comm went silent. I remained there for several more minutes, gathering the strength to move. Finally, I pushed myself to my feet and began the long walk to medical, passing scenes of battle damage and crew members helping the wounded. The ship had survived, but at what cost? 3 days later, I stood at the viewport in my quarters, staring out at the stars. The Artemis was limping to the nearest Alliance starbase for repairs, escorted by 2 heavy cruisers. The official debriefings had taken hours, explaining what happened in the control node, what Crixvon had told me about the Ascended, what I'd learned about their plans. A gentle chime announced a visitor at my door. Enter. I called, not turning from the viewport. Captain Harlow stepped in, her uniform crisp despite the exhaustion evident on her face. The past few days had aged her visibly. Chief Engineer, she acknowledged. How are you holding up? I gave a non-committal shrug. Ship's systems are stabilizing. We'll make it to Starbase 12 without any nasty surprises. That's not what I asked. I turned to face her. I'm fine, Captain. Just processing. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. I've received communication from the Tesserine High Command. They're sending a delegation to meet us at the starbase. My heart skipped a beat. Because of Crixvon. Partly. His actions likely saved not just the Artemis, but provided critical intelligence about a threat the Alliance barely knew existed. She handed me a datapad. They're also coming because of this. I looked down at the screen, showing bioscan results from medical. My results. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until I noticed a subtle anomaly in the cellular structure analysis. I don't understand, I said, looking up at her. What am I seeing? Dr. Padal says it's some kind of symbiotic cellular modification, microscopic but present throughout your system. The captain's expression remained carefully neutral. Apparently, prolonged proximity to Tesserine biology sometimes results in a transfer of certain beneficial adaptations. My mind flashed back to what the Ascended had said during my capture. You have had prolonged contact with subject Crixvon. We must determine the extent of the transmission. Are you saying I'm changing? I asked, fear creeping into my voice. Not in any way that affects who you are, the captain assured me. The modifications appear limited to enhanced cellular regeneration and improved neural efficiency. Dr. Patel believes it's a natural Tesserine evolutionary advantage. Their cells release microscopic symbiotes that bond with compatible host species, conferring survival benefits. I sat heavily on the edge of my bunk. Does this have something to do with the Ascended? The Tesserine delegation will explain more, but from what I understand, the Ascended took this natural process and weaponized it, forcing accelerated and extreme modifications. She sat beside me. What happened to you is completely different. A natural, beneficial adaptation that Tesserines have shared with their closest allies for centuries. Crixvon never mentioned this. According to the Tesserine High Command, it's considered so normal and benign that they rarely think to discuss it. Like humans don't explain that our skin cells shed constantly. She offered a small smile. Think of it as a parting gift from your friend. Friend. There was that word again. The intercom chimed. Captain to the bridge. She stood. Take some time. Chief, your duty shift doesn't start until tomorrow. After she left, I returned to the viewport, pressing my palm against the cool, transparent aluminum as I stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the remaining Ascended were regrouping, plotting their next move. And somewhere out there was the Tesserine homeworld, a place I'd never given much thought to before. A place where a technician had once been a juvenile, captured and partially modified by the Ascended before being rescued and rehabilitated. A technician who had carried those memories, that trauma, with quiet dignity, who had used that painful experience to save us all. I noticed something then. A faint blue luminescence visible beneath the skin of my palm, pulsing softly in rhythm with my heartbeat. Just like Crixfon's bioluminescent patches, I should have been terrified. But instead, a strange sense of peace washed over me. 2 weeks later, we docked at Starbase 12. The Tesserine delegation was waiting, solemn and formal in their ceremonial exoskeletons. Among them was a civilian, older judging by the weathered appearance of his carapace, his antennae slightly curved with age. Engineer Reeves. He greeted me, his mandibles clicking in what I now recognized as respect. I am Vexenar, genetic progenitor of Crixfon. His father, I translated, extending my hand in the human gesture of greeting. To my surprise, he took it without hesitation. My offspring spoke of you in his final transmission, Vexenar said. He called you friend, a term not used lightly among our kind. Something caught in my throat. He was my friend too. I didn't realize it until it was too late to tell them. The elder Tesserine's compound eyes studied me. Perhaps not too late. The cellular bond you now share, it carries more than physical adaptation. In time, you may experience memory echoes, emotional imprints, small pieces of him, living on through the connection you forged. I didn't know what to say to that, so I simply nodded. The Alliance has requested that a Tesserine specialist in Ascended technology be assigned to the Artemis once repairs are complete. Vexenar continued. I have volunteered for this position, if you find this acceptable. I'd like that, I said, surprised to find I meant it. As we walked together toward the briefing room, where the Alliance Admiralty waited, I felt that faint, familiar blue glow beneath my skin. Not a sign of alien transformation, but a reminder of a bond that had transcended species, duty, and even death. Perhaps that was the greatest lesson from our ordeal, that in this vast, often hostile universe, connection was the most powerful force of all. Not the technology we built, or the weapons we wielded, but the bridges we formed between vastly different worlds. Crixfon had given his life to save mine, to save everyone aboard the Artemis. But in those final days working together through darkness and danger, he had given me something else too. A new way of seeing, of understanding that human and alien were just words, and that friendship could form in the most unlikely circumstances. As the Starbase's artificial day cycle began its transition to evening, casting long shadows through the viewport, I looked out at the Artemis docked for repairs. She would fly again, her systems rebuilt, her crew stronger for what we'd endured. And somewhere among the stars, the adventure would continue, with new challenges, new dangers, and new connections waiting to be forged between worlds that only seemed alien until you took the time to truly see them.